Hey there, welcome to episode 92 and the final episode in 2015. I'm Bernie Borges, CEO of Find and Convert and your host of the Social Business Engine podcast. Before I introduce my guest for this episode, I want to take a moment to thank you. Whether you're a long-time listener or even if this is your first episode, I sincerely thank you for listening to my podcast. I truly value your time, and I work hard to deliver valuable content on our Social Business Engine media channel, which of course includes this podcast. Now, I also want to wish you and yours a joyous holiday season and best wishes in the new year. I'm really excited about 2016, and I hope that you are as well. My team and I are planning to bring you more great interviews in 2016 with fascinating people who are enjoying a measure of success on their journey to move the needle in their organization through social business practices across the enterprise. We're also planning to publish more journals on a variety of topics, all of which demonstrate how businesses are being transformed through digital and social strategies. Hey, if you're not familiar with our journals, I hope you'll check them out at our website at socialbusinessengine.com. Okay, let's get to episode 92. You are going to meet Jim Williams, Vice President of Marketing at Influitive. Jim is living the marketing executive's dream. Under Jim's leadership, Influitive, a pioneer in advocate marketing software, has developed a world-class inbound marketing engine that fuels 70 to 80% of their revenue engine. Jim has built a thriving community of engaged advocates made up of customers, partners, and evangelists. On this episode, Jim and I discuss the changing role of the modern CMO. We discuss how the top marketing chief builds a team of internal and external advocates to impact revenue growth, as well as the skills that are needed by the modern CMO and the pitfalls to avoid on this journey. Now, this episode is in cooperation with IBM. We've published Social Business Journal, Volume 6 with IBM titled Inclusive Design in a Cognitive Era, Reinventing Enterprise Email to Make Workplaces More Productive, Efficient, and Humane. This journal is available as an ungated download at our website on the journals page, or you can just visit the show notes page for this episode for a link to download this journal. And remember, it's ungated, so there's no form to fill out. Now, if you're subscribed by email to get our weekly podcast updates, which we send every Friday, this journal's already hit your inbox. And if you're not subscribed to get our weekly updates by email and you'd like to, just visit our subscribe page at our website, socialbusinessengine.com. And now, here's my interview with Jim Williams, Vice President of Marketing at Influitive. Jim, welcome to the Social Business Engine podcast.
Thank you, Bernie. I'm very happy to be here today.
Terrific. Well, Jim, let's begin our conversation. For those that may not be familiar with Influitive, why don't you begin with a brief introduction of Influitive and your journey, how you got to be the top marketing person there?
Sure, Bernie. Well, really quickly, Influitive is a software company. It's based in Canada with offices in Boston and San Francisco and Palo Alto in the United States. We are the advocate marketing company. And so our software helps B2B marketers identify, mobilize, and recognize their best advocates. Those are the, as you say, kind of the evangelists, their fans, supporters, promoters, whatever you want to call it.
Okay. And how about a little bit of your journey? How did you get there?
Sure. Well, I have been in B2B marketing for about 20 years now in a variety
you're a
of
rookie.
roles.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It makes me feel older and older every time I say that. But so I've been doing this for some time. I tend to work at startup or growth stage software companies. It's kind of my niche. I've never worked at a company that has north of 2,000 employees, and I don't foresee that changing. I was a political science guy in college, and that evolved into public relations, which inevitably ended me up in the high-tech world. And then I went from there into product marketing and, through a variety of roles, did demand generation, product marketing, sales enablement, and eventually found myself in the head of marketing role here at Influitive.
Outstanding. So with that career journey, Jim, obviously you have seen the marketing department evolve, and you've seen the traditional role of the top marketing person, the role that we're defining as the chief marketing officer, the CMO. So let's start this conversation now that we've kind of set the stage on a little bit of your background and where you are at Influitive. What is the traditional role of the CMO, and how's it evolved in recent years?
I think it's a really good question because I sometimes think it's the role that's been the most redefined on the executive team. And a lot of my comments here are in the B2B world, which is kind of all of my history has been in business-to-business companies. When I first entered marketing, I remember as a lowly product marketing manager. It was at a software company. It was a global company, and CMO's role primarily was around how to spend dollars in order to create increase brand awareness. And they spent a lot of money on brand building exercises, big events and trade shows, advertising, lots of PR, some analyst communications, a lot of what's called Marcom function. Kind of what I used to call
marketing communications, yeah,
marketing communications, etc. But also like some arts and crafts marketing, right? Like literally creating and printing, data sheets and buyer's guides and the like. And that's that was the CMO's role. And I think that I've got to witness over that, that 15 to 20 year run, like the biggest change in the amount of data and tools available that are at the CMO's fingertips, which has transformed the scope of the CMO's role and their impact on the business.
Now what do you mean by that? So you say the tools that are at the fingertips have transformed the CMO. Can you elaborate on that, Jim?
Sure. I mean, honestly, the CMO's domain has kind of moved online over that period of time, right? So you have this explosion in channels and ways to reach your potential buyers, way to get in front of them, ways to engage them. And as the number of ways and channels has exploded, so too has the number of tools and systems and technologies to measure how effective you are in those channels. So now the CMO is swimming in data, and that data is a very, very powerful thing. It can give you insights into your buyers, into those channels, into your business that the CMO never had before. It really puts the CMO in a position of power and authority at the executive team level. So I really view that as the single biggest change in the CMO's domain, right? It's moved from arts and crafts, let's hope that we're getting the right brand and message in front of people, into no, we're going to systematically and scientifically find potential buyers, engage them, and move them through a buying process. And every step of that journey is going to be measured.
When you said the CMO is now swimming in data, I have to be honest, my immediate thought was the CMO is drowning in data. as powerful and as much as that's a great opportunity for the CMO, depending on the CMO, depending on their situation, it can be a really terrific opportunity, or it can be a drowning situation where there's just so much that they struggle with it. So I love your last comment, Jim, about how now it's about systematically and scientifically moving the buyer through their journey. So, you mentioned that it's really the evolution of digital. So I want to come back to something else that you said, and that is that the CMO has been the most redefined role. And I'd like to understand from your perspective, where do you see the CMO in today's executive, what we call the C-suite?
It's a great question. I think in most organizations today, they're viewed as a revenue leader, right? They are someone that's responsible for the fundamentals of the business, the top line of the business, if you will. finding new market opportunities and understanding from a financial standpoint the best way to tap into those market opportunities, right? That is also evolving. I don't believe the CMO's kind of role and responsibility just pertains to reaching new markets and developing new markets. I think it's very much shifting, so it's becoming kind of that of the steward of the customer experience as well. Part of that explosion in digital channels and data, part of the effect that has had is it transferred power from the vendor, if you will, or the brand to the buyer. Mm-hmm. When I first entered the marketing domain, the seller held all the cards, right? Like,
right.
As a buyer, you couldn't find all the information you needed to make a purchase decision.
Right.
And the best source was through the organization, through sales or marketing that you were receiving from the brand. And that's totally changed. And so now the CMO needs to think about how, okay, the buyer holds all the experience, all the cards, all the information as part of their purchase journey, and what makes them stay around with the brand, what makes them that long-lasting, loyal customer is the experience that they're going to have once they begin signing the check. And so the CMO has begun to take over some elements of leadership of that buyer, of that customer experience as well. And it's very much what defines your brand today, is the experience you get once you've purchased something.
So you made the point that the CMO has become the steward of the customer experience. So since the power is in the hands of the buyer and not the seller, creating the customer experience is of paramount importance. So if I understand your point, well, Jim, you're saying that one of the biggest roles that the CMO plays is to really be the steward of that customer experience so that the buyer can have the greatest experience in that journey as possible.
That's correct. And more specifically, if the buyer today has more information, what is that information that they're relying on when they make a purchase decision? Well, they're primarily relying on the experiences of customers that went before them, right? Because in today's hyper-connected world, I can find anyone through LinkedIn or any social business network or any online community. I can find anyone that's using a product or service that I'm interested in, and I can ask them directly, how's it been? Mm-hmm. Like, how's it been for you? How's this company, how easy is it to work with this company? Mm-hmm. How good do you feel about your decision to go with them, et cetera, right? So like that becomes the brand identity, is what your customers say about you. Jeff Bezos has that famous quote, right? Your brand is what customers say about you when you're not in the room, and that's true more than ever today.
Right. Okay. So then let's talk about the skills that are needed by the modern CMO. You kind of alluded earlier to the CMO of yesteryear that was all about spending budget as wisely as possible across PR, advertising, or Marcom, et cetera. And today's CMO is very different. So what are the types of skills that a successful CMO possesses today?
It's a great question. So I think, honestly, one of the most important skills you have to have as a CMO is that of recruiting and developing talent. Because of the pace of innovation around the tools and tactics and techniques that marketers use, that is increasing. It means that you need to bring people onto your team and develop them constantly, right? People don't just fit into neat little boxes anymore in marketing teams, right? Yeah. Like everything's so interconnected that you need to be able to get intellectually curious people that are very elastic, right? In their ability to take on and understand what is the next step in this buyer's journey, what's the next likely outcome from this campaign. And so I actually think that developing the team and the skill set and hiring the right type, that's a huge part of the CMO's role. There is part of that, it's related to that, is maintaining this balance between, I actually heard this term used recently in a podcast, I love it, is the balance between the Crayolas and the quants on your marketing team.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, we've seen the shift of everything shift towards data-centric and scientific and A/B testing and growth hacking and all, like a much more process-oriented view of marketing. Well, that does not mean that your marketing, you can get away without, inspiring people to take action, right? Your marketing still needs to inspire someone. You need to engage with people at an emotional level, right? And that's kind of the Crayola side, right? The arts and creativity side, the sophistication around your messaging has to be balanced with this very scientific approach, this rigorous, process-based approach to marketing that's kind of grounded in analytics and data. You got to marry those two, the left and right sides of the brain, to come up with the ideal balance. And I think that's a skill set that marketers, CMO needs to have.
Right.
Financial management is a very big one. There are a million new ways to spend your money. I kind of equate the role of a CMO to being much more like a fund manager, right? I'm running a fund, right? And I'm making a lot of investments, and some of them are very conservative investments that'll have slow and steady returns, and some are much higher risk investments that might have extraordinary returns. But I got to keep that portfolio balanced all the time, just like a good investor does. And a lot of that is financial management.
Some are short term, some are long term. Yeah, that's a great analogy. I like that analogy.
Yeah. So, I view those as several of the many skill sets. There's also, quite frankly, ability to work with others. I think we'll probably get to this, but you're much more integrated into the whole business. If you think about, kind of in B2B, the last 15 years has been around integration of sales and marketing, around the scientific approach to demand generation. Well, the next 10 years is integration with the customer experience side of the business. What used to be called customer service, now it's called customer success. Certainly, software companies, what is the CMO's role in managing that, and that has a lot to do with how you work with others around the executive table.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to go there next. The whole aspect of working with other parts of the business. I'm a big believer that the modern marketing department, which of course is led by the CMO, is one that is really visionary across the entire business, and he or she has the ability to collaborate strategically with other parts of the business, including sales, as you mentioned, customer service or customer experience, as you mentioned. So let's talk a little bit about, the traditional proverbial silos between marketing and sales, and talk about the role of the CMO in addressing that. How does the CMO deal with that siloism that's been in place at so many brands for so many decades now?
It's a really good question. It's why there are so many consultants in the world of marketing. Right? In no other function in the modern enterprise are there so many agencies and consultants and experts and freelancers and analysts and all types of things. And the reason why is because I think marketing can kind of put its fingers in so many other areas of the business, and conversely relies on so many other areas of the business to be successful. As an example, again, I refer to kind of this first generation, the first revolution in marketing occurred when technology appeared on the scene that essentially served as a contract between sales and marketing, right? All these marketing automation systems. And again, I was at Eloqua for many years. And so, I kind of helped bring some of those systems to market. But, the beauty of those marketing automation systems was it gave the head of marketing, the head of sales, something to agree upon. This is what I'm going to supply to you. It's going to be of this volume in this quality, and you're going to do this with it. That's our contract. And we're going to write that contract in this marketing automation system that basically became the backbone of how you run campaigns, right? So now all of this technology, those early marketing automations have exploded into this wide array of personalization software and community management software and social media management software and on and on and on. So there's all these platforms with which to build other additional contracts, right? Think of all of there's this suites and suites of tools that are all about A/B testing and optimization, software optimization around your product itself. What people do when they use your product, where do they click, where you go with your product. That's marketing data, right? That's behavioral data that marketing can use, that marketing needs. There is post-sales customer experience software. Like we're in the business of advocacy. We have a platform there. There's also communities and things that allow you to do systematic surveying of your customer. There's, so those technologies, they're filling these gaps. They're breaking down the silos between functional areas in the modern enterprise. They're forcing conversations that might have been difficult to have before because there's no common language.
So what I hear you saying then is that these technologies have become enablers, Jim, that because of these technologies and how segmented they've become, they really enable the CMO to sit down with different parts of the organization and have conversations. I love your analogy of the contract between marketing and other parts of the organization where you say, we're going to measure these types of activities.
It's exactly right. It's exactly right. And honestly, that's the way technology is supposed to be, right? Technology is supposed to automate a process that, if you figured it works, right? But in this way, the technology arrived and helped to facilitate the process discovery, right? It helped to facilitate the conversations of what is this ideal world that we're working towards. And I think that's the case today, right? There's this explosion in marketing technology, and all of that is helping to build much tighter alignment between different players or functions within an organization.
Okay. So, Jim, I want to ask you a question that, frankly, we've really discussed this, but I'm going to put a little bit of a different, I don't know if spin's the right word, just different words to the question to try to get some conversation with you on this topic, maybe a little bit deeper. And the question is more around the value that a CMO adds to the organization. What do you think is, in this world of exploding technology and data and like you said, balancing the skills, how does a CMO add the most value to the organization where they work?
Oh, that's a real good question. But I would say for me, the primary way the CMO and the function of CMO adds value is by bringing the reality of the rest of the world outside of your four walls into your four walls, right?
Okay.
I think it's the CMO that has the most access and the most data around what's happening in the marketplace today, right? What are the wants and needs and hopes and dreams and desires of the people you're trying to engage with? Like that's what the CMO brings to the table. We're trying to address this market opportunity. The market opportunity is this size. These are what the people look like inside this market opportunity. These are the pains that they have, and this is the way they articulate those pains. Right? There's product management is kind of a function that does some of that today with surveys, but they don't do it to the extent, with the breadth of data that a CMO and a marketing organization can bring. Many times what kind of spells the doom of a company is because they just weren't listening enough to what the market actually wanted. Right? They got myopic, right? They began to listen to their own internal conversations and opinions about what should be built and what should be designed and how to better deal with your customers and who to partner with and all this stuff. Like the CMO brings that outside perspective into the decision-making process.
Okay. Boy, you really have a knack for just leading me to my next question, my next planned question, actually. Because where I wanted to go next is to talk about the boardroom and how the CMO fits into the board. Or, we can go one of two ways on this. We could go C-suite, because in a large enterprise, the C-suite can have even multiple levels, right? Different levels of top-level C-suite and then even mid-level C-suites. Or we can go boardroom. And so, wherever you're comfortable, because I know your experience is mostly in, early stage to high growth, like you said, 2,000 less companies as opposed to, 20, 50, 90, 100,000 employee companies. But how does the CMO add value to that C-suite?
Well, like I said, it's a lot of the data, the outside data, both the market size, dynamic data, as well as how people are actually interacting with the organization. I think the CMO has the broadest view of the workings of the revenue engine, right? From the initial interest all the way through to how customers experience your product or service on a daily basis and interact with you. Again, they touch the most steps in that journey. Those are two areas that I think the CMO brings value to the C-suite.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And as you said, you had already touched on that. So here's what I want to do now. I want to go to my summary, Jim. And as you know, I've been taking some notes here, and I want to kind of summarize the key points that we discuss here today. And then I'm going to ask you to very bluntly fill in any holes that I may have left out, because we covered a lot in a short amount of time. We started first with your introduction of Influitive, which is an advocate marketing company. You're a rookie. You've only been in B2B marketing about 20 years, and that your experience has been mostly starter growth stage companies. So I hope I'm having fun with you, Jim.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about the traditional role of the CMO and how it's been the most redefined role in the C-suite. You talked about how about 20 years ago, the CMO's role was really about spending the budget to build brand awareness through traditional marketing like public relations, advertising, marketing communications, data sheets, buyer's guides, that kind of thing. But today, over the last several years, the explosion of tools and technologies has really put so much opportunity at the fingertips of the CMO, but it's also forced the CMO to adapt and embrace the data. You talked about how the CMO is swimming in data, and that's really allowed them to be very powerful in their ability to drive strategic decisions. And we talked about how the CMO is moving from arts and crafts to systematically and scientifically moving the buyer through the buyer's journey, and how the role of the CMO and the C-suite is to do things like strategically identify market opportunities and drive revenue plans around that, and to be the steward of the customer's experience, and how the power has transferred from the seller to the buyer. And so by relying on the experience of the previous buyer's experiences, you can actually gain a lot of insight and understanding from that, and then make some strategic marketing decisions. You pointed out how the brand identity is really what the customer says it is. So the skills that are needed by the modern CMO, you said, recruiting and development of talent. I think that's a really, really key point. The pace of innovation is just, lightning speed. Teams need to be developed. People need to be elastic. I love that phrase, Jim. There needs to be a balance between, I love this, Crayolas and quants, the creatives and the scientific skills, and also the financial management skills, like a fund manager. You used the analogy or the metaphor that it's like managing funds. You're making investments, and some risks, some of those investments are low risk, some are high risk, some are short term, some are long term. The CMO has to be able to work with other parts of the business and integrate the customer experience into all aspects of the business that they're working with, just across the enterprise. You talked about how early marketing technology, when it was first introduced, really was a contract between marketing and whatever part of the organization that was being collaborated with, and most often it was sales. And really, it is still that today. The marketing technology, or the stack, if you will, has exploded. It's become community management, advocate marketing, like what you guys do at Influitive, social media marketing, A/B testing, etc., and things like behavioral data, which includes what you guys do in advocacy marketing and influencer marketing. And then we talked about the role of the CMO in the organization, in the C-suite, and how it really brings, and I like this phrase here. I'm going to see if I can try to quote you, Jim. The CMO brings the reality of what's outside the four walls to what's inside the four walls, or what should be inside the four walls. And the CMO does that through data and being a good listener, and then adding value because of the broadest view to revenue, and really because the CMO touches most of the steps involved in the buyer's journey. So those are the kind of the takeaways that I jotted down. Tell me what I missed, or please feel free to elaborate on anything that I just summarized.
Wow, I don't think you missed anything there. And you sounded a heck of a lot smarter when you said it than when I said it. So, that was a very good summary.
And now you're having fun with me. It's your turn, right?
It was a very good summary. I think you captured all of my thoughts.
All right, so Jim, I want to ask you my final one thing question. And my one thing question is, what is that one thing that you'd like to leave my listeners with as kind of the most actionable summary takeaway from our conversation today?
Yeah, Bernie, it's a really good question. And again, I was just thinking about how you summarized our conversation, and I think the biggest takeaway from today's conversation is that perhaps the best marketing tool at your disposal as a CMO is what your customers say about you, what your customers say about your brand and your products. We've talked about this long journey that the CMO has been on, this transformative journey. It started with kind of better integration with sales and has evolved into managing all this data across the entire customer lifecycle. And at the end of the day, perhaps the best marketing channel is the one that you've always had, which is what customers say, your reputation, or what people say about your brand. Mm-hmm. The key difference today is that the way in which customers say it is totally transformed, right? They can say it at scale. They can say it to anyone. They can shout it from the rooftops. Mm-hmm. You put it on the social web. And so your job is to, create more passionate supporters for your company.
Mm-hmm. Yep. More advocates.
That's right.
Outstanding. Well, Jim, where would you like to send people online to connect with you, learn more about you or what you're doing at Influitive?
Well, you can certainly go check us out at influitive.com, which is the website, the company that I work for. You can learn a lot more about advocacy and about the rest of the team. You can also follow us on Twitter at influitive.com. And if you want to follow me, well, you can find me on LinkedIn. Pretty easy to do. I'm always looking for new connections and building new relationships. That's probably the best way to reach me directly.
Outstanding. Well, Jim, thank you so much for sharing your insights on the role of the modern CMO. Everything that we discussed here today will, of course, be linked up on our show notes page. My listeners know that, but I want to just thank you again for your time and your insights here today, Jim.
Thank you, Bernie. It's been a delight.
Terrific. Well, I want to remind everyone before we sign off that this episode is in cooperation with IBM. We have published Social Business Journal, Volume 6, titled Inclusive Design in a Cognitive Era, Reinventing Enterprise Email to Make Workplaces More Productive, Efficient, and Humane. This journal is available as an ungated download on the journals page at our website at socialbusinessengine.com. And of course, it's also going to be linked up on the show notes page for this episode. And remember, there is no form to fill out. Now, if you're subscribed by email to get our weekly podcast updates, which we send every Friday, then this journal is going to be in your inbox. If you're not subscribed to get our weekly updates by email, you can visit our subscribe page at socialbusinessengine.com. I always like to remind my listeners that I want to thank you for just being here, for listening. I really appreciate your time. I know you've got lots of choices, and I'm really thrilled that Social Business Engine is one of them. And if you're a first-time listener, also thank you. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you'll push the subscribe button on that podcast player so that you don't miss future episodes. And if you are an iTunes subscriber, I would really be grateful if you would write a review for this podcast to help others discover it. We have a direct link to this podcast in iTunes. Just go to socialbusinessengine.com/iTunes for that link. And lastly, I invite you to engage with me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is my name, at Bernie Borges, and our podcast handle on Twitter is at SB Engine. And we also have a Facebook page, which is appropriately named facebook.com/socialbusinessengine. And of course, our hashtag, which we use just about everywhere on social media, is SBE Show. Well, that is going to do it for this episode. Again, I want to thank my guest, Jim Williams, Vice President of Marketing at Influitive. This is Bernie Borges of Find and Convert, wishing you continued success on your social business journey.